I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, actor Thomas Doherty. Thomas is best known for his roles in Disney's Descendants films, the reboot of Gossip Girl, and he stars as a singer-songwriter in the new indie film, Dandelion.
I've played for a musician, singer-songwriter. I've never been in a band in my life. I don't play the guitar. Every time I get a job, I have to buy a new guitar to learn it.
As you can hear, Thomas is Scottish. So by law, he is required to talk about his love for haggis, a food that is actually outlawed in the United States. Scottish food historian Paul Gilchrist joins the show to talk about why Scotland's national dish is banned here. And after you hear our conversation, you are pretty much guaranteed to win your pub's haggis trivia night. We leave no haggis stone unturned. That's coming up later in the show. But now, my conversation with Thomas Doherty. Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Or what time is it where you are? Where are you?
It's technically just turned 12, midday. But I'm a late riser, so...
What is time anyway?
Exactly.
Let's make this so existential. Who are you? Where am I?
I quite literally have a tattoo. It says, "Who is this I?" Let's go deep.
Let's go deep. My first question was going to be about your parents, so we'll turn this into a therapy session.
What was your relationship like with your dad?
Exactly. It's a bit hard to understand what he said there, but Thomas says he has a tattoo that reads, "Who is this I?" I read that you started getting interested in theater and acting when you were 5. You ended up going to performing arts school, and your parents were in banking?
Yes, my mom is in banking and my dad is a financial advisor. So yeah, money people.
Money people. So what did they think about having this super creative kid? Did they know what to do with you?
I think I still am a massive annoyance to them, to be honest. But yeah, I was just an annoyance. I just had all this energy. So I think my poor mother was just like, how can I get rid of this boy? So she sent me to just kind of local theater and stuff.
Totally relate to you, though, of being a child show pony. Like, my mom has sent me some of the videos from when I was a kid doing like my little singing and dancing. And I'm embarrassed watching myself, even when I'm alone watching the video. I'm like, oh my God, you're so annoying. And there was one where my sister and we were doing a newscast and I was like wearing my dad's tie. And I kept telling her, you're ruining it. And she was better than I was. I mean, so embarrassing.
I know, it's one of those things, isn't it? When you're older, you look back and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Is there something in particular that you can think of immediately that's like an embarrassing thing that you've done anytime throughout your life?
I have this tendency, my friends think it's hilarious, and I'm not even aware I'm doing it. But when I tell a story, I get up and I act all the parts out. And I'll be like in a restaurant doing it, and then I'll sit down. And then I'm like, oh, be cool, man, be cool. I'm just not. I just can't.
Growing up in Scotland, Thomas had only seen America in movies and TV shows, so he was very excited to experience the U.S. in real life when he moved here from Scotland to pursue his acting career. What is something that was exactly what you thought it would be, and then what was something that was totally different that you just didn't anticipate?
I thought that I'd be like much cooler in America because I was from Scotland. So I was like, right, okay, I'm not cool in Scotland, I'm not cool in London. Maybe I'll be cool here. Maybe it's like, oh, this Scottish guy. And it doesn't work like that. Any Scots out there looking forward to coming to America to be cool? I'm afraid that's not the way the cookie crumbles.
Believe you. I think that people think that you're cool.
No. And just everything's so much bigger here. The roads are bigger. The cars are bigger. The portions are bigger. Jesus. Everything's just bigger. Everything's more. And sometimes it's a bit much, but I love the American attitude towards, oh yeah, I have an idea. Let's make it happen. Whereas back home, it's that attitude. It's more, I don't know about this, or is that going to work? Whereas out here, it's like, yeah, let's go. Let's make this happen, which I really love. And I love that energy. I just had to get out of it. It just felt so heavy. I mean, my high school's like 3 times older than America.
Oh, no, I read that your high school is 900 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know.
Crazy. And after a while, that energy of buildings, like, it's so old. I mean, we're talking thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so I started to really, really feel that. That's why I came out here, and it's so fresh and new, and people have guns for some reason.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh, it's crazy. That's me on the NRA hit list.
Yeah. So let's talk about food in that context then. Like you mentioned the portion sizes. So like what were some of the surprises about food when you got here? And were there things or are there things that you miss from home?
I do. Honestly, I miss the EU regulated food. I mean, I know technically Britain's not in the EU anymore, but the regulation on the food back home is so much better. And so when I go home, I'm someone that doesn't have a big appetite. I have to like force myself to eat.
Oh, wow.
I'm naturally very, very skinny. And so when I go home, I get really, really hungry. And I think my body knows that it's not eating some apple in a lab, because over here, there's a lot of processed stuff. Like GMO's crazy.
Who is she?
Who is she? Who is she? She's killing us.
I know. Yeah, talk a little more about that when you say the EU regulations for people who are listening in the States. What does that mean?
I'll butcher it and probably say it wrong, but the laws, it's a lot stricter back home for produce to be put on the shelf, and the things that ways are raised, like cattle and chickens and things. Everything's a lot stricter. Much healthier, yeah. Not so many drugs and antibiotics and pesticides and all these things. I mean, like, you look at the ketchup, for example. Same brand, Heinz ketchup. Same brand, same bottle, same everything. But the ingredients back home, there's maybe 10. Out here, there's like 40 or something. Like, it's crazy. And so I really do feel it, and I notice a difference. And everything here has so much sugar in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything has sugar in it. Bread has so much sugar in it. I think my body just doesn't get hungry.
That's so interesting. So like the plane lands and you're just like, I need to eat when you go back home.
It's the weirdest thing. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be starving, whereas I don't get any of that back here.
Wow. I already knew that the EU and UK don't allow companies to include artificial dyes and other harmful chemicals that are found in many processed foods in America. But when I actually saw the labels side by side, it was pretty shocking. It was actually kind of upsetting. You can buy the same box of Quaker berry oatmeal in the US and the UK. But while the UK version has 5 ingredients, oats, sugar, freeze-dried raspberries, freeze-dried strawberries, and natural flavoring, the American version has 23 ingredients, including red 40, artificial strawberry flavor, and something called creaming agent that is made up of 5 ingredients. It's the same story when you look at the labels on Mountain Dew, Doritos, Fruit Loops, and so many others. You can peruse a bunch of side-by-side labels on foodbabe.com, a website run by Hari Vari, a food activist that Time magazine named one of the most influential people on the internet. Do you remember about a decade ago when Kraft removed artificial dyes from American mac and cheese? Well, that was a huge grassroots campaign spearheaded by Vari Hari. Right now, she has a petition going to convince Kellogg's to remove artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives from all of its kids' cereals. Ingredients that are derived from petroleum, crude oil, and coal tar that can potentially cause several health problems. And she's not asking companies to reformulate their cereals. She just wants them to use the recipes they already sell in Europe and Australia. Vari says Europe takes a proactive approach. They ban additives that are potentially harmful. But the US takes an innocent until proven guilty approach and only removes additives when they have been proven dangerous, a process that can take years and years and years. Now, obviously companies prefer to use the American recipes because they're cheaper to make. Red 40 costs less than using real strawberries. I put a link in the show notes so you can check out all of those side-by-side labels. And when you do, you might lose your appetite just like Thomas Doherty did. When Thomas goes home to visit his family in Scotland, he usually starts his visits with the same meal.
My mom and dad will come pick me up from the airport, and then I'll go home and my dad will make me a Scottish fry-up, which is eggs, bacon, beans, sausages, maybe black pudding. Do you know what black pudding is?
Does it have blood in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys call it blood pudding. We call it black pudding. It's basically just cow blood. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, I'm sitting here being like, yeah, the regulations, and I'm eating.
Well, you did play a vampire in a movie, so now you have a taste for blood. Yeah.
That is very true. So yeah, that's my typical kind of first meal when I get home. My mom is a great cook as well, but my dad's a very, very good cook and he does all the cooking. Yeah, I go home and I just turn into like a 12-year-old again. My mom does all my washing. Dad makes all my food. It's great.
Is your childhood bedroom still set up like it was when you lived with your parents?
It is, yeah. But it's still exactly the same.
Wow, it's like a little shrine. When Thomas brings friends or partners back home to Scotland, he insists they try the country's national dish. After the break, it's time to talk about haggis. Every time Thomas brings friends or a girlfriend home to his parents' house, his dad makes haggis.
But I'll never tell them what it is. I'll always make them eat it, and they're eating it, and they're like, oh, this is really nice. And then I eventually tell them that what's inside of haggis is sheep's heart, sheep's lungs, stomach, suet, spices, onions, and oatmeal. So not many people come back to Scotland with me.
Yeah.
But it is always fun to just sit and watch them eating it, knowing that they're about to find out and knowing that the friendship's probably going to break up.
But worth it. Totally worth it.
Always worth it. Have you ever tried it? Have you ever tried haggis?
No, I haven't. And I'm somebody, when I travel, I like to try anything that's local. Like I've had balut in Vietnam. Do you know what balut is? No. It's a fertilized egg embryo that is boiled and you eat the partially developed little chicken out of the shell. It's like a delicacy in Vietnam. Like I've eaten that. I've eaten pork.
God, what was that like? Did they cook it?
It was, out of everything I've eaten, that's the one thing I would never eat again. Cause you just see the little, it's like wrapped in like kind of gelatin. It's pretty rough. I mean, I never want to disrespect a culture, but for me, that was hard to eat.
Does it have bones inside of it?
Kind of. The bones are still soft. And I don't know. I'm not going to say anything else about what else is inside of that shell because I think it's going to be hard for some people to hear.
That is so heavy.
Now you can feel what it felt like to make people eat haggis.
That is very true.
So if I go to Scotland eventually, I will try it because I do that. Like when I lived in Japan and we went to this restaurant way up north on the peninsula and you're just in this kind of little house restaurant and you're looking out on the water. They go out with a little net and then they just serve you a bowl of tiny live fish and chopsticks and you're just supposed to eat them live.
And they're wriggling around.
They're wiggling around and you dip the live fish in soy sauce and just eat it. Like this is what I do.
Holy shit. Haggis has got nothing on you.
Nothing, right?
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, Japan must have like the freshest food, like the freshest fish and stuff.
I mean, yeah, it was alive. It was like, you can't get fresh.
Quite literally.
Yeah. So do you like haggis? You grew up with it, I'm assuming.
I do, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, you grow up with it and it's so like nostalgic. And I seldom do eat it, but when I do, it's always with family.
Yeah.
My dad will make it really nice and I do really like it.
So how do you prepare it? You cut it into slices, right?
No, it's not like that. It's it's all of this mess of meat and oatmeal in like a sausage casing. Once the casing's broke, it's just like a mince. You scoop it onto like a plate and eat it. Okay. And you have it with neeps and tatties.
I was going to ask you about that later. Yeah.
Yeah. Haggis, neeps and tatties. So haggis, potatoes and turnip, I think.
Turnips, yeah. Mashed turnips.
That's the most traditional Scottish meal you can ever have. God, imagine that was your traditional meal. Why did you land on that one?
I don't know. Your high school is 900 years old. You guys are old school. I mean, you know, your national dish comes from another time when people live differently. So yeah.
That's true. There's a thing called the Address to the Haggis. It was written by Robert Burns, who was like a very famous poet and playwright from Scotland. He's kind of Scotland's equivalent to Shakespeare. And he wrote a thing called the Address to the Haggis. Someone will say all this old Scots language and talk to the haggis and commemorate it.
Okay, we have waited long enough to learn what haggis actually is. Haggis is sheep's heart, liver, and lungs stuffed into a sheep's stomach with oats and spices like nutmeg and coriander.
There's an idea that Scottish food isn't seasoned, but after a first bite of a haggis, you will know we know how to season some of our food.
That's Peter Gilchrist, a Scottish food historian known as Tenement Kitchen on Instagram. Thomas likes his haggis served with neeps and tatties, mashed potatoes and rutabaga. Neeps and tatties. Neeps and tatties. Yeah, these Scots are so whimsical. So when would you eat it?
I would eat it for breakfast. A roll in haggis and egg is a delicious breakfast. And a Glasgow crispy morning roll. If you're coming to Scotland, number one thing you have to get is a Glasgow morning roll and try some haggis.
Peter says haggis has been eaten in Scotland since the 1500s. It was a survival food, eating the organs of an animal. Then in 1786,
haggis becomes a kind of working class hero food when Robert Burns, a poet, he writes a poem called To a Haggis. He becomes this Chapel Roan of poetry for Scotland in the 18th century. He's your favourite poet's favourite poet, and working class people really respond to him.
In Scotland, there is an annual Robert Burns Day where people eat haggis and recite the poem. But it's also ceremoniously read all year round, sometimes before it's eaten. I want to hear this poem. Would you mind reading the Robert Burns
I will.
poem?
I do have to say, there are people who all they do is recite this poem. This is a big poem in Scotland, and there are people that train their entire lives for it. So I will do my absolute best. And I will say it's in the Scots language, which is not English. So there'll be bits and words you'll hear that are familiar, but in the most part, you'll just have to try and, through osmosis, take in the event. Okay, here we go. Fair fa, your honest sonsy face, great chieftain o' the puddin race. Aboon them all you tak your place, pain, stripe or thairm, we'll are worthy of a grace, as lang's my airm. The groaning trencher there you fill.
What does this poem mean / why did he write a poem about haggis?
He writes a poem about haggis. Imagine a popular artist, thinking of an American kind of counterpart, writes a poem or writes a song about a hamburger helper and treats it as if it is the most important thing. Treats it like this is Michelin star food. At the end, he's talking about, look at other people who choose not to eat the haggis. That's why they die on the battlefield, essentially. Whereas Scotsmen that eat haggis, look how full they are. They have meat on their bones. We're looking for real food that keeps us alive. If your prayer is to be fed, give them a haggis.
So is it basically a metaphor for the strength of Scottish people and the strength of working class people being humble and...
Yeah, it reaches people at a time, and it reaches Burns at a time when he's writing it where there's a real identity crisis in Scotland. And all of his work really is about treating Scottish culture seriously. At the time, lots of writers are comparing Scottish food to what they feed their horses. He says, no, my food is fantastic. My world is fantastic. My country's fantastic. Look at us. Look how amazing we are. Look what we can do with a haggis. But if you wish your grateful prayer, gie her a haggis.
You read it so well. That was great.
Thank you very much. There was at least 3 mistakes that the people that practice their entire life will email me to tell me where I made a mistake.
Peter says haggis fell out of favor in the 20th century when it was seen as poverty food, but it has since made a comeback. So what brought it back in the 21st century?
Young chefs began to experiment with haggis, but the real innovation comes in the 21st century, where it's served in slices and it begins to come into our breakfast as a savoury meat, as a full Scottish breakfast. Again, young chefs that are trying to forge an identity for Scotland, for tourists, for people that want to eat here. But then it begins to go into your local roll shops, your local bakery.
How often would somebody at home make it from scratch, or would you usually just buy it already made, from your butcher or the supermarket?
I do not know a single human being alive who has ever made a haggis. When you have expertly made and expertly seasoned haggis at your local butcher or in your supermarket by a local Scottish company, there's absolutely no need to maneuver cooking a heart at home or cooking, dicing up some lungs. I don't know where you start, no.
Yeah. Speaking of lungs are the reason haggis is banned in the US. It's not the haggis per se. It's that since 1971, the U.S. has had a blanket ban on consuming livestock lungs. There's a really interesting full circle thread in this episode because it's so indicative of how Americans have been indoctrinated about food that we think that lung is bad, but that's natural. It's just a different part of the animal than we eat. But Americans will eat all kinds of packaged foods with chemicals in them and dyes and, ingredients that you can't pronounce and you don't know the names of. So there's kind of an irony there to me that that's the clean and better food. And then the lung is the dirty food.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's proof with Scottish people eating haggis every day that it's fine. It's not.
I think we're fine.
Yeah.
I think we're okay. And I can think of many countries where you eat all parts of the animal and it's expertly prepared, been eaten for centuries, if not thousands of years. And we're all still here.
Peter and Thomas both told me that there are vegetarian and vegan versions of haggis out there if you're not a fan of lungs, heart, and liver. After the break, Thomas reveals his last meal. I have to ask you the main question of the show. What would your last meal be?
My last meal would be a ribeye steak made by my father.
Oh.
Fries, a small chopped salad with my dad's own vinaigrettes, and probably a nice glass of red wine.
That's classy.
Certainly not haggis, let me tell you that.
Do you call them fries or you call them chips in Scotland?
Chips.
Okay.
We call them chips.
Yeah. You don't have to Americanize this for our audience.
But my whole thing is I go home and I just get slagged by my friends and family because I put that in the trash. Like all the boot, the trunk, and so all these words are very Americanized.
Yeah.
And that is sacrilege in Scotland. Like you can't be going home and speaking American.
Well, your words are so much better than ours. So yeah, don't bring our garbage home, literally like the bin, bring the bin home, not the garbage. Yeah. For his last meal, Thomas Doherty wants his dad to make him a ribeye steak, chips, chopped salad with vinaigrette, and a glass of red wine. He says growing up, he was spoiled by his dad's cooking. His dad packed him a really tasty lunch every day for school and made the family dinners.
But I'll be honest, I never really developed that thing for food. And I think it's because I'm just never that hungry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, and that you said that earlier. Are you someone who just kind of eats for energy as opposed to pleasure?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, definitely in America. I love the way that the Spanish eat. I love the tapas.
Yeah.
And I go to Spain all the time. We've got family friends there. And that was just, I guess it's equivalent of Mexico for Americans, sure. Vacation. Yeah, I love the way the Spanish eat. I love when they eat. They eat so late at night.
And all the food is wee.
It's all tiny
wee food. Yeah.
And healthy. And you know that it's good for you. It's right. It's so well regulated. So.
And that was Thomas Doherty's last meal. Well, thank you so much. It was super fun chatting with you, and congratulations on the film.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure, honestly. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your support and all your love.
Thomas stars in the new film Dandelion, playing now in select theaters, and it will be available everywhere you rent movies online starting August 27th. Was this your first indie film?
First indie film, yeah. First indie film. I really wanted to just get away from doing the kind of commercial stuff. Mm-hmm. And that definitely, I love it and it has its place, but I was just hankering to do something where it wasn't about money. I honestly had no intention of this film even going to the cinemas, you know what I mean? It was definitely a passion project, and I can definitely say it was a passion project because I know how much I got paid.
Yeah.
But I just needed that. I needed that for my soul and for my heart, and it was a special time in my life, special experience as an actor.
Thanks to Peter Gilchrist. Where do you live in Scotland?
I live in Paisley. If you've heard of the pattern Paisley, that's where it was invented. The textile capital of Scotland in Paisley.
Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. This episode was produced with Maliha Syed and mixed and mastered by Sarah Bernard. I created, host, and co-produce Your Last Meal. Original theme music by Prom Queen. Make sure and tune in next Thursday to The Leftovers to hear me quiz Thomas on traditional Scottish foods. You don't know?
I don't know.
Is this a fake accent? You're not really Scottish, are you? Subscribe to Your Last Meal in your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, give us a quick rate or review. You can find me on Instagram at HelloRachelBell, that's BELLE. You can sign up for my newsletter at rachelbell.substack.com. You can watch my food and drink TV show called The Nosh with Rachel Bell on Cascade PBS. And finally, you can order my new cookbook, Open Sesame. It's all about tahini, sesame oil, sesame seeds. It's out November 12th, and you can pre-order now. Links to all of that stuff in the show notes. I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal.
When we say, something's small, something's little, we'll say, that's wee. We'll even sometimes say that wee little thing, which makes no sense. But words like that's Scots and what you call Scots.
I love the use of we. I think it's so cute. Okay.
We say we a lot, even if it's not applicable, we'll still say it.
Because everything in Scotland is just teeny tiny.